My City is a legacy game by Reiner Knizia. It's for 2 to 4 players, in which you are building a city through different buildings, placing them on the board. You're all playing together on your individual board, but you're often competing for different goals depending on whatever level you're playing at. Because the game starts at a super simple level where you're laying things out, you have a very simple goal of covering as much empty space as you can. You want to cover rocks, because who wants rocks in a city? Well, I guess some people do. But in general, rocks are bad, trees are good. We want to cover all the rocks and empty green spaces. You are going to flip a card from the deck, and each player places that same building onto their board, covering up the space. Oh, there we go. Nikki, slip that over. You pick the yellow building. Everyone does that. Your first piece must be a river. You cannot cross the river. You can not cross the mountains or the forest on the side. There we go. That'll work. You do there, and then you flip another card, place it on. You cannot overlay
Tom's
the
here.
buildings.
Pause for a second. Let's get Tom on the video.
I'm doing Tom's job.
Hello.
Hey, Tom.
Myself.
I'm glad you made it.
Yep, sorry, running a little late, but looks like you guys are already pretty well into it.
Well, we can start over from the beginning and have you talk about the game.
Great, and happy to talk about it, yeah.
Yeah, right now we still have Scott on screen, not Tom. I thought Tom would say the words, and then Scott would say
magic.
Yeah, that's right. We have a ventriloquist act. Tom is a secret ventriloquist as well as a woodworker, apparently, looking at some things you're doing. So yeah, glad to have you on, Tom. That's right. So I don't know if you want to talk about My City from the beginning, give an overview of the game. Too bad it didn't win the Spiel des Jahres. It's a fantastic game. There's a lot of gameplay in the box, both in the Legacy campaign and just if you're playing afterward on your own, once you're through with the Legacy campaign or in the middle of it or whatever.
That's a great point, and one that I think might have been overlooked a little bit is the concept or the idea that you can continue to play this even after you've played it. A lot of Legacy games will add that in, but it's kind of like just the end scenario you can continue to play, whereas this one has like a full-on developed separate backside of the board, which you can see there below. And I love that. I think it's great because we're really trying to attract the family gamers and the casual gamers, as well as the hobby gamers and the real enthusiasts. I think this does a good job of trying to balance that out, and that's one of the ways. That and the price point and the simplicity and the rules, all those things combined, I think really help make this an attractive game for, I think, everybody.
It seems general hallmark designs is that they straddle that line of appealing to casual players, more serious gamers, because they are relatively simple, and yet there's a lot there once you dig into it.
Yeah, and I mean, like with so many other Knizia games, like Lost Cities, I was just reading a forum post about that today, how someone was saying like, oh, like it really, like it presents itself a little bit too quickly for me. And that I think that we as hobby board gamers kind of we don't give ourselves enough credit. Like when we see something, it's because we've been trained and we've been playing games for years, and we read rules. So when we see something, we're like, oh, well, then, laying down a card into the discard pile is maybe a good idea, maybe not a good idea, but I can also utilize that as a strategy. That's something that doesn't come with most people's first play. And I think that this is going to do that. My City is going to do that exponentially. Every single time you play, you're going to have to discover a new strategy that might just vary slightly from the previous game. And I think that that's going to be very interesting to a lot of people who haven't played a Legacy game before. And for those who have played a Legacy game before, I think they're going to appreciate the very clean rules and the very polished feel I think that this game has.
So maybe you can present an overview. You can pretend that I haven't done it before and present
Absolutely.
the game from scratch.
And I love how you've got it set up right now, which is perfect. You'll notice there's 4 boards in the picture. 2 of them are on the Legacy campaign. Those are the ones in the lower half. Yep. Those boards are what you're going to start your game with. Each player gets their own board, and this is great. You're going to write the name of your city. You can write your own name on there, but you can also come up with the name of your city. You write it with a pen or a marker on your board, because that's going to be your board for the whole game. Now, you'll notice also surrounding those boards, we have some tiles, some different, the red, yellow, and blue
Different
tiles.
building
Those
tiles.
represent buildings that you're going to want to strategically place in your onto your board. Now, there's some finer points as to, like, you can't build over a river, you can't build onto the rocks or onto the forest area to the right. But for the most part, you're just trying to cover up as much of the green space as possible on the first episode of this. And you're going to determine which buildings get placed at which time using the deck of cards that's in the center there. The deck of cards, they represent, on the other side, all of the different building types that you see in front of you. So one player, or you can do this any way you want, but usually when I play, it's one player is going to flip over a card, and everyone is going to place that building. Like you see there, that long yellow line building. Everyone is going to take that same piece, and on their board, they're going to place it. And the first one needs to be next to a river. Like I said, you can't build over the river, and you can't build over the rocks and the trees. So that's your first move. And then the same player or another player is going to flip the next card, revealing a new building. The square, red square. Now everyone is going to build off of that. And that now needs to either touch the existing building that you've already placed. And it can go on the other side of the river right there. I mean, that's not like touching per se, but it is next to the existing building. Now, again, what I said before, you're trying to cover as much green space as possible. So you can see those are good strategic places because there's not particularly like a bad area around it that would make it hard. Like if the player on the right had placed it above the yellow building, you might have a weird, like, one spot that might be hard to fill later.
Right.
Anyway, I get into it too much. So you're going to keep doing this until all of the cards have been played, or when players just can't put out any more buildings, which is most likely going to happen just before all of the cards get placed. When that happens, you're going to score, and you score according to the empty spaces are bad. And then rocks that haven't been built over are especially bad. And then trees actually give you bonus points. So you're going to accumulate or add up all of your points. The person who gets the most points is going to score some of the overall score. Now, this game has 24 episodes in it, and so each one of those episodes, there's going to be a winner, and the winner's going to get points. At the end of the 24 games, the person who has the most points is going to win the whole campaign. And in addition to getting those points, they're also going to get stickers. And I love this part because when I was at New York Toy Fair explaining to toy store owners that hadn't seen a Legacy game before, which, there are some, this really blew them away. And so they're going to place stickers. Now, if you won, you're going to, I think you get the rock sticker that you have to put on the board. Rocks can be bad if you don't cover them. And if you come in last place, you'll get the small trees, like those right there. Those are actually good for you because you can get more points with those. So it kind of balances out who's winning and who's losing is going to balance a little bit. So it potentially could go back and forth between who's winning and who's losing. That's nice because I don't think that there's going to be much of a runaway victory, at least not for the first, 20 matches. Maybe after that, someone might have a clear strategy that's winning. But I think you can go most of the game not knowing who's going to win because there's a lot that can change in between each game.
Right.
Yeah, all right. So you've played your first game, you've scored it, you've stuck new stickers on your board, and you're going to read rules that will now incorporate just a slight variation, right? So now it's the colors of the buildings and where they're placed is going to be important. Each one of those 8 envelopes you see there has rules for 3 games. So that's where you get the 24 games total. And so you're not supposed to look at the envelopes that you haven't got to yet. So the first 3 games, you'll be privy to the information there, right? But you don't know what that second, third, or fourth envelope has in store for you until you actually progress to that part of the game. So that's where it's interesting. You can't strategize ahead too much because you don't know what's coming.
Right.
Was that good in detail? Was that too much detail?
No, it sounds good. So you're not even supposed to look at the titles of the chapters, or is that just a teaser for what's coming?
Envelopes we can see. But you're not supposed to open them.
Right. So we see the churches, the floods, the factories, the mines. I played through, so I know what we see the virtue letters. Those are. You have some idea, or you can have a concept of what's coming, but you don't know how that will be implemented in terms of the actual rules.
Exactly. And more along with the theme, right? So in this game, you're basically settling this land, and you are progressing through pre-industrial through the industrial stages of history. So things are going to come into play, like churches. And I don't want to give anything away, but the envelopes do kind of leak a little bit of the theme, but they don't tell you about any of the mechanics.
Yeah.
It's a really fantastic game. I think that it's going to be a great gateway weight game for a lot of people. I think people who've played like similar games like Ticket to Ride or Carcassonne, anything like that that's got kind of the medium to lightweight. This is a really good introduction to a whole new world of board gaming. The campaign or legacy style game is something that still hasn't really reached a lot of the mass market. And I think that this has the potential to really open up that door.
Yes. I've been to Toy Fair, met you there. I can definitely imagine how this would be a new thing for most people who play games, because legacy games are popular among geeks, but regular people probably haven't caught yet to the notion of drawing on the board or ripping up things or throwing out parts of whatever. And so definitely a new idea for them.
Yeah, so in this, and this isn't necessarily a spoiler, but you're going to be adding stickers and new cards and new tiles and all of these things, which totally blows people away. When they haven't heard this concept before, they're like, oh, you mean the next game is different? And not only is it different for everyone, but it's different for each person specifically, because my board might have trees on it that yours doesn't. That's such a wild concept. We take it for granted, I think, as like, the gaming hobbyists, for sure. Right. I'm very excited to see this in the hands of people like my sister and her family, which they're definitely going to get a copy, and I'm going to force them to play it.
That makes sense. I mean, yes, you're looking at the board and you see there's large open spaces on the left and the bottom. There will be something there. And of course, it's open initially as to what might be coming. Now, we have the backside of the board, which is a non-legacy game. And this represents, if I remember correctly, roughly game 10 or episode 10.
I want to say it's around 10 or 12. It's not quite halfway through.
Right. So you see some elements on that board which are not on the original board. You got a little hint there of what's coming.
I don't think it's too much of a spoiler because you don't actually know what those symbols mean, right?
Right.
Like, sure, I think there's a picture of a well on the back, but what does that mean,
Mm-hmm.
right?
That's right. Some gold nuggets there too.
Yeah, so if you want to play that, you could just jump ahead and read the rules. But I always recommend people at least go through the first part of the campaign to get to this eternal board.
That's right. You definitely learn how to play better over the course of episodes as you learn how you can sort of build yourself into a hole or set yourself up for failure just with looking at the pieces that Nikki has left. You have some idea of what might be coming. You don't know what order, but you know what you want to fit on the board in particular places. And so you start building to make that happen if possible.
Yeah, I know that some people really love Reiner Knizia games because they feel like they can like really invest in like the same strategy every single time and really get in their head. And I think that this still does that to an extent. Kind of what you're picking up on. The pieces that you have and the board that you have are going to stay very much the same or very similar to the same every single game. The progress is very slow. So you can get strategy and you can start to memorize the pieces and you know where they're going to fit. Now, maybe the next game, there's going to be a slight twist on it, but you still have that previous experience to rely on. Okay. Yeah. Just such a fun experience. That's another thing that at the New York Toy Fair, I think I tried to emphasize with people who weren't familiar with this as like, it's a game, but it's also an experience. Because for a lot of people, including myself, I have played legacy games, but you know, like majority of my games are just one and done kind of games. This is more of an experience where you're going to sit down with a group of people and you're going to spend, you know, at least a month, probably 2 months with the same group of people. And it's a fun way to interact with people because you're really going to get to like look back on, oh, remember when you did this? Like that kind of stuff. I think it really promotes that.
And typically when we were playing, we went through one chapter at a sitting. So we'd have 3 episodes in a row and you sort of see how things build in that part of the narrative and certain things being introduced and added. And then that was it. And then next night we started with something new. So yeah, it's a different feel.
It's definitely, I would prefer to play it that way. But the cards that you, every single envelope has like rules, and then they have like a cheat sheet card, right? And the cheat sheet's great because it kind of reminds you of the previous rules and the rules that are coming in that specific chapter. So it's nice to be able to sit down and play 3 games in a row. But if you don't have time to do that, that cheat sheet is nice. It kind of helps you like catch up to speed without spending a lot of time going back through the rules every single time.
Okay. Do you have approximate release date for My City in North America?
So you can pre-order it right now on Barnes & Noble, right? They have a pre-order option, and they're going to start selling it hopefully within a couple of weeks in North America. And then it's going to be available nationwide, all your friendly local game stores. It should be available October 1st.
Okay, sounds good. Or if you speak German, you can order one now from Germany and be all set there. Yeah, there is a lot of text, though.
This is one that I wouldn't recommend. There's a lot of games, like The Crew got a lot of early German copies in the States because it's pretty much just, you know, the cards and numbers. There's a lot of text in here. I wouldn't recommend unless you're fluent in German. You would know your copy was German.
Yes, I had to work through. I had my phone out over it, translating bit by bit, trying to go through things. So yeah, it is a challenge, but it's worth it for Reiners.